Hello, hello, hello. This is Adriane Berg, and this is the Ageless Traveler. This is the show that supports you in your travel, knocks down the barriers that you may have to travel, so you never stop traveling. And we do more than that. We're your advocates within the tourism industry. And if you're in that industry, take a look at agelesstourism.com so that you can better attract us, serve us, and retain us. Why? Because the 60-plus traveler is the most traveled and most sophisticated in the world. And if you don't believe me, wait till you hear this podcast. Now, what are we doing today? We're speaking with a real Noir superstar, Duane Swierczynski, and he is a New York Times best-selling author, two-time Edgar-nominated author. And if you're a mystery buff like me, you know exactly what the Edgar means. He's written 11 novels, including his latest, California Bear. But believe it or not, he's here today to speak to us about travel in a very special way. We often talk about legacy travel. We talk about going back to our homeland, our heritage. Some of us even have 2 passports because we have become citizens of dual countries because of our background. But have you ever thought of taking that background and your sense of place and making a walking tour out of it? Yep, umbrella and all. So this is what very, very creative Duane has done, and he's about to do that and share with you his process. So thank you so much for being with us today, Duane.
Thank you, Adrian. I thank you for making me sound so important. I'm kind of stunned. Like, wow, who is this guy?
Well,
wow.
You're more important than that. You've got graphic novels like Breakneck and Redhead, and of course, you also are co-creator of The Guilty, an Audible original starring John Lithgow, which everybody loves. Brian Dallas Howard. It's so wonderful. And I can go on and on, but
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
There's a part of your family that goes right with your Noir creativity. And it actually fascinated you. So let's start with what you learned about your family and how you're making a walking tour out of it, as well as, of course, a creative book, as you always do. What was that background you discovered about your Philadelphia roots and family?
Sure. I mean, I've been a crime writer for 20 years now, and it was only though 10 years ago that I realized about the real life crime in my family. I had no idea. Once you start digging exploring your family tree, you learn certain things. And this was that the crime I discovered was I had an ancestor. It was my grandfather's older cousin was a cop in South Philadelphia. That's where all of my family came from when they came from Poland, through South Philadelphia. He was a cop making $2.25 a day, I think. And he got into a scuffle with a local gangster, and the gangster shot and killed him in cold blood outside of a bar. The building is still there. The tile floor where he died and bled out on is still there. So that, when I realized that this was in my family tree, I'm like, how did I not know this? And B, what happened? My curiosity went off. So I kind of started this 10-year journey of exploring and trying to figure out what happened, who this family was, and how our families intersected. And that, led to this sort of idea of a walking tour, kind of. Yeah.
Now, let's start with how you discovered this. You said you were doing some research on your ancestry. Would that be like ancestry.com that many of us do? Or how did you get this spark to begin with?
Exactly. What's funny is it happened to 2 fronts. One was me kind of building the family tree and starting that process. At the same time, quite coincidentally, this cop named Steven Swierczynski, he was in Jersey, reached out to me and said, "Hey, I think we're cousins, or extended cousins." And that's where I learned that he had knew all about this history. This was the man that passed away, Joseph Swierczynski, was his grandfather, so great grandfather. I apologize. So that we started bonding over that and started comparing notes and realized that wow, these 2 branches of our family have not known each other for decades. It seems that's the mystery to me. It's like, how can families be so sort of far apart and far flung when you're bound by such amazing things in the past? So that just started the journey. I approach everything with curiosity, and I think that's kind of what this is like catnip to me. My writer brain was like, "You must write about this," right? So
sure. Well, I have a couple of comments for everybody here. Oh, Duane is surprised that people don't know each other within families. Well, that's what the modern world is. There's a wonderful book out there called Bowling Alone. It was written in the 1990s. It was the beginning of the end of bowling leagues, where people would bowl in leagues together. They knew each other, and they were often family members. And you can see these in movies, even noir movies, by the way, of the 50s and 60s. And what this researcher discovered was that more people in the United States were bowling than ever, but they were bowling alone. There were no leagues anymore. The leagues had to, so we're doing everything by ourselves. And I think that's why this ancestry research for all of us feels like a glue. We're trying to be the glue of our family. And that's what you did. And then weird things happen, like you meet the cousin. We met somebody on a cruise through Facebook, and this particular person had a picture of my husband's father when he was a little boy. You can't make it up, but it seems to be a call to the universe. So I suggest to everybody, second thing, if you do go to Salt Lake City, I've done it many times, you can go to the Temple Library. And of course, the Mormons in Salt Lake have the biggest repository of ancestry information for anybody that wants to go.
Wow.
So these are great little trips you could take. It's a travel show. We like to let people know some of the things they can do to do what you already have done, which is research their family. So you researched and you discovered this really great crime story. All right, you're a crime writer, 20 novels out there. What do you do with it? Now, this is your personal process I'm asking about. What do you do with that discovery?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, for one thing, I just go down the rabbit hole of research, which honestly is my favorite thing to do. I just love, old newspaper archives, family trees, any kind of documents I can dig up. And, for the crime that's over a century old, I don't really have much hope of finding a witness who's still alive, who's around. There's no chance really of that. Otherwise, that'd be my first stop. Who's still alive, who can tell me these stories? Because that's the best thing. Hearing this, someone walking you through their memory is so valuable. It's not so much what they say as how they say it, how they remember it, what they think of it, the way to describe it. That to me is fascinating. So in this case, I didn't have that. All I have, honestly, were descendants, and that's kind of my family and
many times removed.
Family. Yeah,
many
exactly.
Times removed from the situation.
And even that, though, is kind of it's sort of revealing, because I went to visit the grave of Officer Joseph Swierczynski, who I never had heard of before this incident, and I went along with a cousin I never met, and her husband. So it was so surreal, like being around this grave. We're all relatives, yet as if we're people who I've never met. We're strangers, yet I just felt this kinship automatically. It felt very warm. It felt like, okay, this is a great thing. I'm so glad I reached out and said, hey, I'm here. Would you want to join me?
Yeah, so it's very bonding. It's a very bonding experience. Now, didn't you also find out that there were plaques all over, I guess, the city of Philadelphia for fallen policemen, and you could actually even make a walking tour out of that, and your ancestor was one of those? Yeah, tell us about that.
It's a great program. Any police officer who died in line of duty, it's a volunteer thing. The lawyers started this years ago, where they'll do a ceremony, put a bronze plaque on the place where the officer fell, or if that's the case. And my ancestor has this bronze plaque outside what's now a pizza shop. I visit whenever I can to that corner. It's pretty fascinating. There's a whole ceremony that I didn't know about it in time to attend the ceremony, but I did watch the video. They did a great recording of the whole thing. It's a big to do. Politicians came out, and it's nice to have that live on, even at the grave. I visited, his grave in 2018. All those years later, 99 years later, the police still put a bouquet of flowers for the holidays in front of the grave, which is kind of wonderful. I do love that memory.
It truly is. And we come back, we're going to talk and unpack this process that Duane went through so that you can do it too. And I'm going to even tell you my plan for doing it, which is so much more, let's say, narrow than what you're doing. But it'll give people an idea that anybody could do that. They don't have to have a big story in their background. So don't you guys go anywhere. There are many barriers to travel, but money should not be one of them. I have put together a free ebook for you, but please act now. It's available to you only until August 1st of this year. It's called Luxury Travel for Less. You can access it completely free of charge at luxurytravelforless.info. It's the kind of book that really is helpful. 32 pages, 75 websites, and all the hints and tips I use as I travel for 3 months throughout the year on a budget that's very similar to yours. You know, we're all on fixed income here one way or another after retirement, and yet we love to travel, and we love to travel in luxury. No more bad beds for me. Luxury travel for less.info. So now we are back, and we're back with a really very special guest. He's somebody who is a speaker. Those of you who follow our newsletter, Travel Tuesdays, and we get a lovely newsletter every single Tuesday. One of the things that I wrote about was Noir, which takes place in Philadelphia, but they had their very first conference in Palm Springs that I attended. One of the speakers was Duane Swierczynski, who we're speaking with now. New York Times bestselling author, 2-time Edgar-nominated author, 11 novels out there with some of the very best graphic covers, by the way, I've ever seen. So I'm going to tell all you guys that in our next Travel Tuesday, you're going to see some of those books, beautiful covers, putting them on our website too, because I know that you're also readers, not just listeners. So one of the things that he was talking about, that Duane was talking about, was the fact that he had discovered some crime in his own family, where many years ago, a Philadelphia policeman was shot down after being involved with trying to get one of the crime bosses in the I guess the caboose. I don't know what they would call them those days.
Right.
And he's decided to make a walking tour out of it, as well as a crime novel. And I could just see it. I could visualize this crime novel, and in the back, a map out there. I could just visualize being able to walk around Philadelphia and following this crime story. But it's really the story of his family. Now, I've started to think, wouldn't this be great? Duane, we're real travelers here. So we go everywhere. And what do? We do a walking tour of Paris, a walking tour of a neighborhood. In our case, for Jewish people, it's usually the walking tour of the ghetto. But okay, right. It's still the walking tour of our past. But why can't we make what you're doing a personal walking tour that has to do with our family? So you started with research, you got the research, but how are you actually creating this? What's your process? Are you thinking like I was thinking, that it's a map? Is there a chronological order to take this tour? What's the structure that you're thinking about?
That's a great question. I mean, the first step for me was, after you get your research, because, ancestor.com gives you census reports, the census surveys, you have addresses and all this wonderful stuff. You have draft cards. So once you have your addresses, and I did that, and I also learned, where literally my Polish family, landed in Philadelphia. And I saw how close. I mean, here's the trick. For me, once I have the addresses, I walk the beat like a private eye. Nothing beats walking the beat, right? You go walk around because, you can look at Google Maps. You can sort of understand where things, sit. But unless you walk it, you're not really seeing it. So I walked from the docks to where the former location of the sugar plant where my great-grandfather worked. It's not there, but the bones are still there. I can, sort of see where it was. And then finally, a block away was the house where, all of my family grew up. I want to say it was like 19 people in one very slender row home, which is kind of crazy. Right?
I know that's amazing in itself. For your kids to see where your family may have grown up, 19 people. I could just see a little, they call them shotgun brownstones. Yeah. You could see right through from one end to the other by opening the door.
Yeah, and I dragged my daughter with me because, she was really into history. So I brought her her picture in front of this, this former tenement, now a very, very expensive house in South Philadelphia. I wish I could afford to buy it. So it was a wonderful thing. And what really kickstarted in the structure is interesting. I mentioned my daughter because part of this too is about her. Part of it is we lost her to leukemia 6 years ago. And that just sent me into a tailspin, obviously. And the one thing I clung to was my family tree. And getting back to the story, okay, if I could figure out, my family, maybe that would provide not an answer, but at least a little grounding, if that makes any sense at all. Like I felt comfort, seeking and learning my family history. So what I did was I flew back not long after we lost her to walk the beat again and kind of collect my mind. And when I did that, that was like, this is how I'm going to do the book. almost as if you were with me coming back to Philadelphia after being away for a few years, walking the beat, and me giving you a tour. And once I pictured it as a walking tour, the structure kind of fell in place for me.
Yes.
Like, 'cause I would take you here. Here's the crime scene. Here's where the chase happened. Here's where the gangster grew up. Here's the flower shop where formerly a sort of a gangster bomb went off, to take out some. It was just, again, it's so tightly packed, South Philly. It made the walking tour part easy because it's all on top of each other. All these, these blocks are so crammed into each other that, yeah, it just became a natural structure for me.
Now, when you're giving your presentation at NoirCon, you did mention your daughter, and it was very, very affecting. And I think that there's a foundation that's associated with that as well. Am I right?
There is, yes. It's
yes.
the
tell
Evelyn
everybody
Swierczynski
about
Foundation.
That.
Sure. It's the Evelyn Swierczynski Foundation. It's Team Evie, we call it for short. We basically raise books or collect books for Children's Hospital Los Angeles. My daughter was a big reader, and they have a program there that gives a new book to every kid every day, which is to me the most wonderful thing possible. So we're very happy to support that in her name.
And that's wonderful. And if they want people to donate books, because we have so many people who are very generous around here, we'll put that in our show notes too for everybody.
That'd be lovely. Yeah, actually, it's our holiday book drive right now, running through December. So that'd be wonderful. I'll send you information about it.
Great. And all of you will see that in our show notes, both on agelesstraveler.com, in our Travel Tuesday, and of course on all of our disseminators. So I was so inspired by this that I really gave some thought to it. Now, I'm criticized for this. There's a whole world of older persons' creativity called legacy books, legacy creativity. And what they ask you to do is to either record video or audio or write your legacy so that your kids and your grandkids could know your values, can know what you think, your wisdom. And I go and I say, I don't have any values. I don't have any wisdom that I want to impose on anyone else. Who am I? All right. Could not think of anything worse than having wisdom from the grave. So what should I do? You sparked this idea for me in terms of legacy. What I really would like my kids to know was what it was like in my formative years, what formed me. And that's was great. Brooklyn. That was really Brooklyn. Brooklyn is a character by itself.
Yeah. And I lived there for a few years. Where in Brooklyn were you, Adriane?
East Flatbush.
Oh yeah.
I know, you can't make it up, right? So what I wanted to do, East Flatbush. So that's classy, right? I go to all these things. I'm part of the United Nations, and they say, "Where are you from?" "Oh, I'm from Nairobi." "Where are you from?" "I'm from London." "Where are you from?" "I'm from East Flatbush." For some reason,
great, I love that.
It just doesn't have the same ring. But there are things that will never happen again. The Church Avenue Cinema that showed Psycho would never happen again. Tilden High School, where it was a great melting pot in those days. And you were in the Italian neighborhood, and you were in the Jewish neighborhood, and you were in the Puerto Rican neighborhood. So these are very iconic places. And as you said, the home that I grew up in had a stoop. Nobody has a stoop anymore. But
so it's sadly true.
It sold for $34,000 when my mother moved out. And I did the same thing you did. I looked it up on Zillow. It just changed hands for $739,000.
Wow.
But these are some of the places that would be my little walking tour, including every time somebody broke up with me when I was a teenager, which was a lot. I walked down one street and I would shake it off. And still today, when something bad happens to me, I walk for a while and I remember that street and I shake it off. So to me,
I love that.
Yeah, these are more important than what is, my feeling about how to change the world. They'll figure it out. You're going to do a book with it. So is it going to be almost like a travel book of this small little world that you have discovered?
Well, it's funny. I've been trying to figure out, because you want to eventually, and then you convince someone to publish this thing eventually. So I'm trying to think how to sell it, right? What is this thing? I'm calling it in my head like a a pulp nonfiction gangster memoir, which I guess sort of covers all the bases. But
Right.
honestly, I'm not sure I've seen anything quite like this, which is kind of the reason to do a book, right? I think the reason you do a book is because you can't already find it on the shelf somewhere. So yeah, I think it's more like, yeah, it's very much a first person, like, hey, come along with me in this. I'm going to tell you some crazy stories. I'm going to be very, emotionally vulnerable with you. I'm going to tell you about myself a little bit, but mostly about this. Honestly, even if you don't want to, tag along for the ride for my family story, because other family stories can be, boring sometimes. I promise you a good gangster story in all this somewhere. There's really a great untold crime story that fascinates me. So, me being along for the ride is just the bonus, if you enjoy that kind of stuff. So I'm really I really do kind of almost see the reader in my head, and here's what I want to show you. I do like walking around with people and showing off places I know. It's one of my favorite things to do in LA. I moved to LA 8 years ago and live, near Pasadena. And whenever I have a guest, it's like, ooh, I'll take you on the tour. Like, what's your interest? And I'll tailor a little tour for their personal interest. And I love doing that. So I'm trying to do that in book form with this story.
Well, there are many of us who do love to show about our past. We also love to travel, and we want to basically translate our past into a legacy, but in this case, a very physical one that you could walk through. Before we take a break, I do want to say, you said that there's no other place quite like this or no other book quite like this. I think you're absolutely right. But there is one author like it, and you might be surprised, and that's Mark Twain. A lot of people don't know that Mark Twain, and actually Dickens was another one of them, wrote travel stories. And in fact, made more money on their travel writing than on anything else they've ever wrote. Reason that they made so much money was the same reason that you're suggesting. It wasn't just a travel guide like you might find, very important ones like chromers, photos, okay, very important, but they weren't guides. They infused them with their own personality or their own style of writing, in your case, a crime story.
Right.
So that's why I was so fascinated by this. But I think we all have our own story. They're hard to tell if you're not a writer like you are. They're hard to tell those stories. But if you begin to describe places that meant something to you, it seems that your creativity gets so much more established. And what you say and do and write are very interesting. Don't you guys go anywhere, because now we're going to enter into another world, the world of noir crime writing. We'll be right back. What are you doing between March 29th and April 12th, 2025? Are you going on safari? Well, we are. Please come with us on our very first Ageless Traveler trip. I will make sure that you see everything that's on your bucket list. We're going with the very famous Colette Tours, one of the oldest tour operators in the United States. They know us, they respect us, and they provide for us everything that we need. Yes, we are going to Kenya. We will see the city of Nairobi. We're going to the Serengeti. We will see the Big Five. We will also have adventures of a lifetime. If you have been studying safari, or even if you have gone on many safaris, this is something really different. So how do you find out about it and get your special discounts because you're an Ageless Traveler? Very simple. Go to agelesstraveler.com. That's our website, agelesstraveler.com. Take a look at featured trips. Get the details by clicking right there. You can do everything from inquire, get your question answered, to book right away so that you're going with us. It is a terrific, terrific tour. And by the way, you can also go to the Masai Mara on an optional pre-trip tour. There's a lot more to it than that, because there's yet more opportunity if you have longed to trek with the gorillas in Uganda. Yep, we can make that happen too. So please take a look at agelesstraveler.com, featured travel, and go on safari with us. And now we are back. Now this is a rare opportunity for me, to be honest, because in general, noir books and Noir Con is about movies and books. So it's a combination. And the people that go really are like any other aficionados. They're really steeped in this. They have their own language. On the other hand, for people who they've seen a movie or two. They've read a book or two that you might call noir. It still gets you. And what we have here is somebody who could really bring us into that world. Duane Swierczynski, I've mentioned many times that he's a New York Times bestselling author. He's got 11 books out there. I did mention that it's not just books. The Guilty is an audible original starring John Lithgow and Bryce Dallas Howard. And he writes private eye thrillers like Lion and the Lamb and on and on and on. Now, I think we need to start with a little definition because I used the word noir con a few times. What's noir? What does it really mean? What's the difference between it and you also said crime writing?
Right. That's a great question. And one we've been debating at NoirCon for, 20 years now or 15 years. So my personal definition, literally noir is the French word for black, and that's kind of what it was that label is applied to a certain style of film, I think in the World War II era. So it was a certain style of film, but as it translated into literature, noir fiction, I take it as, it's it's an attitude, or as the kids say today, it's a vibe, it's the idea that the universe really is out to get you, and the ending is going to be probably pretty dark for you. It's this overwhelming kind of pressure, from the world, and it messes with you. We've all been pushed, right? We've all been pushed to our edges over the years, different ways. And that to me is like, I think the fun of reading noir is similar to why people like horror movies. It's a safe way to explore those feelings and feel like, okay, my life may be, pretty in a rough patch right now, but it's nowhere near as bad as the poor guy in Postman Always Rings Twice, right? I mean, it's like there's a comparison, like, oh, okay, at least I'm not this, And I get a lot of, I think you have to have a heart to have your heart broken, and I like having my heart broken in certain novels and movies. It's a perverse thrill.
So can noir movies or noir books ever have a happy ending?
People would tell you no, but I don't know. I think I think so. I mean, to me, noir is a flavor. I mean, purists would say it has to have a bad ending and a very, very dark ending, and kind of leave you at the abyss. I don't know. I think it's a flavor, and I think you can pull out of the abyss, and maybe you're different for it, and that itself is noir. But purists would probably hate that. So I'm not sure.
It's very interesting. I'll give you the setup, and then I'll ask you the question. I wrote about NoirCon in our Travel Tuesday, and I got about 5 or 6 responses on one thing that I liked very much. Now, 5 or 6 responses doesn't sound like a lot, but honestly, it is. Most people read it, and they don't particularly reach out and write. So that's a lot. And what were they saying? They never saw any of the movies that I had suggested they see. I made a list of the movies I liked the best from NoirCon, and they all wrote back, and they said, we've never heard of these movies. And we went to see them. We found them on Netflix, not as good as the big screen, of course. And we love them. And now we're hooked, right? So here's my question to you. If you were going to tell somebody the first 2 or 3 books to read, what would you tell them to read?
Oh,
and you're allowed not to mention yourself, because I know you're humble and it's hard for you to. But those would be the first 3 is Duane's books. But other than those,
I would never do that. But yeah, I love that, because NoirCon, the strength of NoirCon to me, I love how that was your reaction, because I go to it as a fan as well as the participant, because I just want to hear about cool stuff I've never heard of before. Like I saw a movie by a French director and actor named Robert Hossein, who I know his work as an actor, but not his films, because they're unavailable here in the U.S. Oh my! It was a
vampire
movie. Yes.
Serial killer / oh my goodness, it took place.
It was wonderful.
Favorite 1920s France. I mean, it had everything.
So that excites me so much. So as far as your question, great question. I mean, for me, noir personally starts with David Goodis. In fact, David Goodis, he's a Philadelphia crime writer, noir legend, who really inspired NoirCon itself, because Lou Boxer, the organizer of NoirCon, we were both huge fans, and we just said, hey, we should do a little gathering of Goodis fans just to talk about his work. And that really, back in 2007, we started that. That became NoirCon. So any of David Goodis's novels, Library of America has a great collection of 5 of them collected. And these days, they're not hard to find. That wasn't the case, say, 20 years ago. They can be tough to find. I love Cassidy's Girl, because Cassidy's Girl takes place in the Philadelphia docks, right near where my family, sort of came up in Philadelphia when they immigrated from Poland. So that is like a snapshot of like, okay, here's this neighborhood. And Goodis is so great at like, he does that kind of, I guess, Mark Twain thing where he kind of tells you a story and it's a noir story, but you're getting a nice little travel guide to Philly in 1950, say, which is pretty amazing. That's one of them. I'm a big fan of of course, Dashiell Hammett. I go back to him all the time. His crime writing is just so he had only five novels, but they're all wonderful and different. And I like The Thin Man. It's not noir because it's funny, but it's pretty dark. The heart of it. It's pretty dysfunctional. And lastly, to me, Patricia Highsmith, her work is, to me, the purest definition of noir. She leaves you at the abyss and laughs as you go, tumbling over the edge. I love her. It's a very sardonic books, and they're twisty and kind of, you can't guess where they're going, and just wonderfully dark and weird. And so was she, apparently. Apparently she was a monster, but that's okay.
Yeah, I for those of you who don't know, you've probably seen The Marvelous Mr. Ripley. I don't know if Marvelous.
Oh yeah, the talented
Mr. Ripley. She's a true icon. Yeah. What you may not know, there was a wonderful movie called Carol.
And, I loved it. Yes.
Yes. And that is an adaptation of one of her other books.
That's right.
And so for those of you who know that particular one, you get an idea if you haven't seen Ripley. So these are your suggestions. Really fantastic. I have one tiny travel story that has to do with this. I was in the Aleutian Islands. Great. Don't ask why I was in the Aleutian Islands. I went there to cover a new, basically a hotel that was for fishing in the Aleutians. And we had to go to Nikolsky, which was very, very difficult to get to. And it didn't really work because you needed instrument flying to get in. So it was difficult to have a hotel there. But in order to get there, you have to go to a place called Dutch Harbor, which was the center of the Pacific World War II stations for soldiers.
Wow.
And was all around. And Dashiell Hammett was stationed in the Aleutian Islands.
That's right. That's right.
Now they have a museum on Dutch Harbor. And I walked in and I didn't know what to expect. The first thing I saw was Dashiell Hammett, who is the editor of what we would now call Stars and Stripes, which was the edition of the newsletter for soldiers during World War II, a different name. And it was a place where once, if you survived, and there were thousands of American soldiers and Japanese soldiers buried in the Aleutian Islands because of that war. It's a very, very unknown part of the war. But if you survived, you went home on a boat. And they had what they called the Aleutian gaze. Most of the men were semi-blind because of the snow, because they and the light. Wow. And they recovered. It took them a long time to recover. But it was a kind of a horror show scene.
That's incredible.
And that's when and Hammett was in that scene. He was in that scene. And a young man. So you can imagine how that might have affected the way he wrote and his hard-boiledness, and what he did, and the fact that there aren't a lot of happy endings. But, so when you travel, if you're aware of different cultures, different genres, there's so much you pick up that go over your head if you're not, focused on it and it doesn't trigger something in you. So that's why I see culture and theater and art is really all part of travel. So now I'm going to ask you my favorite question. Where do you like to travel now? Now you're a young guy. You're doing a lot of work. You've got kids. I don't even know if you get away. Do you get a chance to travel a lot?
That's a great question. And actually, it's funny. You led me to a place I want to bring up anyway. Part of my wanderlust lately has been very local. Even though I've been in LA for 8 years, it's still very new to me. And it's a huge city. It's just a mammoth place to explore. And I write a column for a magazine called Bare Bones. It's like a pop culture quarterly. And it's called the Field Guide to LA Pulp. And the premise is I come up with a favorite writer of mine, say Hammett, say Goodis, and I trace where they lived, worked, partied, perhaps died, in LA. And I do almost a walking tour of that, I've done 9 so far. And that to me is like my version of local travel. I can do it in my spare time. No planes required, just curiosity and a newspapers.com account is all you need. to kind of explore your favorites. So I do that for fun. I do though. I do love drives. I've driven cross country myself and with my our family, and that's always wonderful. I just love seeing things at ground level, and I have a curiosity about the country, but also the world. And the book that really set me on this path was, I'm sure you remember this. I'm sure you've read this and talked about it before. Michael Crichton's book Travels, his memoir of all his travels around the world, and even his local experiences in LA and New York and everywhere else he's lived. His insatiable curiosity just sparked my 17-year-old brain. It was like, man, what a life that is to be a writer and be able to just explore the world and write about what you see. That was the best thing ever. So I take inspiration from that book and his example.
Well, it certainly is the best thing ever. I'll say a word about curiosity. Curiosity is one of the top things that keep you living longer. Ken Dykewald, America's gerontologist, his company is called AgeWave, and it's called Radical Curiosity.
Wow.
Because in all of his studies and his work, he discovered that curiosity was one of the number one things that add to your longevity. So we're all good. All of us here listening are very, very good.
That's
on
relief.
That. Yeah, I know. Isn't that good? Because you think you're a nutcase, right? Because I always have to go look around the corner. What's around the corner? Where is Adrian? She's looking around the corner. I have to.
Right. How can you not? Right? How can you not do that?
But it also brings up for the rest of you guys, a friend of mine who creates walking tours for our group called Free Walkers. We're long distance walkers. He is enamored with Albert Einstein, and he created a walking tour of where Albert Einstein walked when he was at Princeton. And what he discovered was that he would walk a lot, and he'd walk with a lot of different scientists, great names in science. And then, of course, there's cemeteries to go to see where they were buried, and all that sort of thing. So, a walking tour could be made from almost anything that strikes your fancy, and then you can share it. Don't you guys go anywhere. Are you culturally curious, but you can't always travel? Or do you have a loved one that you are a caregiver for, and you'd love to see them travel, but they really cannot do so? Well, we have affiliated with Wowzitude. You might have read about it in Forbes magazine. It's the online real-time travel guide. You can actually visit places on your computer, on your telephone, and of course on your TV. Simply go to agelesstraveler.com, take a look at the travel products, and you will see a list under Wowzitude of some of the places you could have gone this week. For example, England, Rome, and all of the places that you feel you just might have missed because, gee whiz, they're so far away. How about traveling to Ecuador? And what about here in the USA? Well, Wowzitude is renowned for bringing real-time travel experiences to your home. And we've affiliated with them because, while we know you never want to stop traveling, sometimes you have to travel from your armchair. It's Wowzitude, the agelesstraveler.com travel products. And we are back, and I think that this has been one of my most riveting conversations because I love the idea of melding your travel, your legacy, books, what you love. Duane Swierczynski, who is my guest today, New York Times bestselling author, 11 books. It's very easy for you to find him. First, let me give you his website, but of course, it's going to be written out. So if you're driving, you don't have to stop the car now. So it's such a perfect name of a website for Duane. gleefulmayhem.com. Gleefulmayhem.com. Happy crime, happy noir. I don't know how he creates happy noir, but he does. And there you're going to find a free newsletter, right? They can get there's so much information if they're interested in this genre. If they're interested in what you're doing, you'll go to gleefulmayhem.com and you'll be able to continue this conversation that we're starting for you. So I want to talk about promotion for a minute. What's your plan? How will you let people know about what you're doing? Are you considering melding it into something, like a walking tour online?
Oh, that's a great question. And right before I answer, I have a quick other tour for you to shoehorn in here. A little plug for this friends of mine who they run this great tour company called Esotouric. And they do some like true crime tours, literary tours, but they have such a wonderful, deeply researched bent to it. It's amazing. They're 3-hour tours. They're now walking after COVID, but I'm telling you, I learned so much about this town, and that actually really inspired what I'm doing. So, it is actually an answer to your question, because I think the way folks can, promote things is be a fan as well as a, person getting their own story out there. Go find walking tours you like in the areas you are or want to travel and visit, and be part of that community. I think you'll find social media, ways to meet them, Substack or other newsletter sites. Just be part of the conversation. That's a big thing for me, And I think once you then share your own stories, you have a kind of already a built-in audience in a way, because you'll be part of a kind of a little club of people who enjoy this stuff. It's funny you say this, as I'm a pro, but I'm notoriously horrible at self-promotion. I don't know at it. It's the most uncomfortable part of what I do. I just want to write these things and help people, it lands the right person. But that said, I know that's an important part of the game. And I think my plan going forward with this book I'm writing, the working title is Man Full of Trouble, is the gangster title I have in mind. And I want to do pieces of it through my newsletter, just to share almost like little stories and vignettes to stoke some interest, but also to test drive some material, honestly. I love the idea of putting things out there in a very intimate level. I think I have about 900 subscribers, which is nice and small, but great. I get feedback, and I love to hear what works in real time, rather than writing a book for a year, waiting a year to come out, and then hearing, not so great. This is what I can hear in real time and help fix things, as I write them. That's new for me. And for me, the books comes first, but I think after it's finished, I would love to explore a way of doing what you said, like either using something, on our phones to do a walking tour or virtual or what have you, as a way of, a different way of telling the story. That'd be really exciting to me.
I'm mentioning Dickens for the second time. I just finished a biography. And,
Wow.
As most people know, that Dickens published in pieces, just what you said. There was no Substack, but there was a newspaper. And he published almost all of his books in small pieces with deadlines. But that's what we know. When you read his biography, it's very similar to what you're doing. He would wait. And he would get responses from people. And they would write to him, "Don't kill little Nell. Don't. I don't want to see that." And he would then read that. And then his next part, which he wrote, almost 3 days before it had to be published, he would listen to that and take cues from the readers. So this was a guy who kind of figured out how to get feedback at a time that there was no such thing as social media or computers or anything of that nature.
Yeah. That's genius. I had no idea that me and Chuck Dickens are in the same wavelength. That's
and look and I'm telling you, he's going to make a name for himself one day.
If that kid keeps trying, you're right. Keep punching,
I know.
Keep punching hard. He'll succeed, I think, in Dickens.
You got it. So this is not new. Many of us right now have amateur blogs, amateur podcasts. Women over the age of 60 are on Instagram, putting in beautiful photographs, not day after day, but minute after minute. So we all have a way to promote if we are going to create. And we actually can do it like a pro. Now, before we leave you, I will put it in these show notes, but I give a shameless plug to your friends who create these walking tours, because you brushed by the name of the company.
I did. Yeah, it's Kim and Richard. They do a thing called, the company is called Esotoric. And so it's somewhat esoteric, but with Tor in the middle of the word. They're online. It's esotoric.com. They do these weekly walking tours, but they actually have their own newsletter. They do video blogs, vlogs, they call them, and they're really deeply invested in LA history and preserving things that, are at the risk of being lost, which I love. They're crusaders, as well as being teachers and wonderful hosts. So yeah, please, if you're in LA, I can't recommend enough taking a tour. Or if you're a crime fiction fan, especially, they'll do a Raymond Chandler tour. They do a James Cain tour, like anything that kind of Charles Bukowski, if you're more of a, gutter poet fan. So that's fantastic. So anyway, they have a wide range of options. They're fantastic.
And for those of you who are in Portland, Oregon, you know that there are some important bookstores. And Bukowski, if you can't find a Bukowski, you can find it there. So any place that has hippie literature, actually, you're going to find Bukowski. I thank you so much. This has been a wonderful, lively, and really an important conversation. It's terrific. And the only thing I have left is I'm going to push you. When do you think this will be available to us?
Oh, okay. Well, if you sign up for my newsletter, you will start seeing very soon kind of the first wave of little stories I'm going to share. My own deadline for myself is I have a deadline of when my ancestor was murdered, March 20th, 1919. So my deadline for myself is March 20th of this coming year, 2025.
Oh.
Just to get I'm a guy, former journalist. I need a deadline. So I give myself one. So,
right. Well, it's very close. So let's say the Ides of March plus 5.
Exactly.
Is your deadline if we want to be noir about it. Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. And you know what I'm going to say to the rest of you? This is Christmas season. You're going to find Duane's books on Amazon. You will also find on our products and services page my curated, and they really are curated products and services for people who love to travel. Everything from a special case so that you can take your own pillow from home to a wellness coach who's going to help you maintain your health while you travel and anything in between. And that's on agelesstraveler.com. And for everybody, never stop traveling.